There we go. Nope, I did not want to press that. There we go. No, it is not made for kids. Save. Let's see if the audio is working. Just want to make sure. What up, fellas? Thank you for joining so quickly. I just need to get my usual ginger ale. Loki, are you up my butt over? Yep, you are. Get some ice. All right, I'll give you some bread. Yeah, you heard the word bread. Uh-huh. All right. You want some ice too, Sweet Pea? Come here. Here you go. I think it's really cool. Yes, sir. Well, I drink it because of my stomach, but also, I don't know. I've gotten accustomed to it. So for me, ginger ale is, definitely a plus. I really hope the audio quality is coming across good, especially with the Saramonics microphone. Hopefully we get some good individuals today because I definitely want to go over injector, some of the new injector settings. Now, I'm not going to say how everything works because that's going to get a little bit too complicated, but I'll definitely get into some details, like what CVO means and all that stuff. Like, I'm not going to get into that. That gets way too complicated for some people. Need to just kind of get some people to join in here. Hopefully, we'll get a few extras. Hopefully some people will, get some good information. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. I'm glad the sound is coming across cleanly. It's not some crazy, stupid, expensive microphone. I did a lot of, your typical online research, and I found this brand's, well, it's kind of Saramonics, like super high quality microphone for the price. I figured so that everybody can hear better, cleaner. Just hang tight for another minute. All right, Loki, I'll give you a piece of bread. Here's your piece of bread. There. And you're still going to be up my butt, right? Come here. Let's see if this thing can spot. Well, I don't know. Come here. Up. Can we get... Yeah, well, it cuts him out. Why you're disappearing? You're phasing out of this universe. My dog is now phasing out of the universe. He's got to teach me that trick. I've been trying this thing with this screen. I thought it'd be a lot better than the background that was there before. But I know it's not perfect, but, hey. So let's start with some of the problems that occur, even in some of the, even OEM style, injectors. And when you go bigger and you don't have full access to the data, that starts to become a problem because we technically do not have full access to the data. There is a lot more data. I'm pretty sure to repository. So, let me see. Wait, nope, where'd it go? There, it says it's back. There's a link somewhere. Go to here. I've used this before to kind of give examples and come up with old ZL1 files when I used to do my ZL1s and stuff and the Camaros. And let's see, let me give a perfect example. Okay, here. Not a huge injector, more of like a OEM size. And there's a reason I really, so I've shared this with a couple other individuals to kind of give them an idea. I'm pretty sure I have this downloaded on this PC. Generally, I don't use this for my HP tuner stuff, but here we go. Now, while this may be difficult to see, I might just have to explain because the resolution I know is not perfect. I'm going to blow it up huge. I can't really see what's going on, but if we go to Fuel, General, Injector Slope, let me see if I can, well, I can't really make this huge. It will not let me. I do not remember how to zoom. But if we look, this is in PSI, 65, 250, 400, 1000, 1250, 1500, 18. Those are the pressures, and at each pressure, I think the best way is pounds an hour that we can convert, and that's 94 pounds per hour. But we can see that has a slope to it. So basically, what's up, Derive? How you doing, man? And by the way, thank you, everybody, for joining so quickly. We don't have that access in Hondata. So this brings in the question, well, what do you do that you don't have it? Now, I said something, and I don't know if I said it in the... I don't know if I said it in the description, but there are times that you do not want to use the actual size of the injector. You want to use something maybe a little bit less, especially because basically we have one setting size here. Now, what this essentially does is takes that other slope here and then just reduces or increases these numbers. That is all that does. The problem occurs when, now that we're reducing that number, increasing that number, that's not a linear scale, especially when, well, okay, so all HDEV 5.1 injectors, which, oh shoot, I have it here. Thank God I did not forget. They all work on the same principle. They all basically have the same coil wrapped inside of them. The bigger differences are the tip itself, where you can actually, you're not going to see it on this screen, but the tip itself, and inside they have this piston. And the holes in the piston and the material can vary. So that's where they start to differ. Now, and one other place is on the top of the injector, certain brands have like a little pre-injector restrictor built into them. And when you look at the input on the injector, what you'll see is a little, like a very tiny hole essentially. No, I want that back up. Let me see, where can I find something? What injector looks like that? God. I wonder if they have the... I wonder, I don't think they have an OE replacement. Because the factory FK8 ones, should have grabbed one, they don't. What other... yes. Yes. Where is it? Where is focus 2.3 turbo, fuel and air, injector. Pretty sure. Yes. Okay. So, I hate to. Okay, move this over. Hey, stop turning blue on me, will you? Hey, what the heck? All right, let me try that again. Why does it keep turning blue? There we go. Okay. Okay, well now it's out of phase. No, I want... So, there we go. Now, what on earth do you think this hole is for? Now, there is a reason that it's there. And this injector, it's important that it's there. Because some of the designs and the holes inside this little piston, inside this DI injector, there's different sizes, and because they use slightly different materials in some of them, depending on what they're trying to achieve, this has a different amount of maybe weight to it. This can also affect latency, the internal design. So you have that, and how sensitive an injector is to when the high pressure pump load pushes the fuel into the rail. Since it's not a steady stream like an electric pump, it literally just pulses. And what can happen, the more fuel that's flowing in and through the injector can literally smash this shut. So what you would find is when the pressure starts getting higher and you start revving the car out, you're going to get the car start breaking up. So this holds true for a lot of the bigger injectors and modified injectors. It can happen. So, but here's the catch though. That makes that injector very limited, and it changes that injector slope. So because that changes that injector slope here, this slope that's here, since it changes this, and essentially what it does is it makes it act kind of inverse, where at lower pressure it doesn't do as well, but at higher pressure it should do better. And my brain, do I have that right? Yeah, so the more pressure you jam into it, the better it'll do better when you start going like 220, 240 bar. But the problem is, what if you don't have enough pump to get there? So this is the downside of building up off of a regular like OE injector on the FK8, because it has that restrictor. What's up, Abe? So that is the downside of that, because you're going to be limited by that. And obviously because of the design, it shows you that it's sensitive to getting slammed shut. Now, but another thing that happens because of the size of these holes, when you get into the bigger 2000s and the 2500cc injectors, and you try making like a huge high pressure line, what's going to happen is you're going to try to push so much fuel through these little holes in this. They call it a pintle. You're going to try, it's just so small. I can't even, where's my, I can't even, let me see if I can pull that up to the camera real close. There's such a delay on that side. Let me see. Which camera lens? Oh, okay. Let me see something here. Let me turn that green screen effect off. Sorry. None. And there we go. Oh, it's not going to let me focus. Are we going to be able to focus this? Okay, maybe now you can see those little holes in there. All right, there. This way, everybody can see the little holes in there, and we can see this is just a little pintle, and we can see it just goes. This is the end of the injector, obviously, and it just pulls open, and there's a pretty hefty spring in here. But this also goes to the point where you can't clean these. The holes are simply too small here to get any debris that's gotten in here, and once it's wedged, it's destroyed, because you can't get it out. It's not coming out. Any debris, small, gets in here, scratches it up on the inside, or you're not maintaining your fuel system, you're going to destroy it. It's really, it happens quickly, and it doesn't take much to kill them. It really doesn't. I had a customer who put 2000s in, and he was not going through at least 1 tank of ethanol per week, and he was doing short trips to work, and he killed a brand new set of 2000s in 2 months, just from not getting the fuel through and little bits of debris. They get in there and they scratch them up. So to the volume of the high pressure pump, back to the high pressure line, we're talking about how basically the pumping action and too big of a high pressure line will slam some injectors shut. This usually happens the bigger you go. Now, the injectors I sell, you can throw 240 bar at them and they'll still open. You can throw whatever line size you want in it and they'll still open. Because the way they're made, the sizes inside the hole, inside of here, they're different. So they'll basically allow more initial like volume through, and it won't, the injector is basically able to move through the pressurized fuel more easily. And there are a lot of injectors that don't have that restrictor. That's actually more common that they don't have it than do. So back to the fact of the scaling though, when you have one that will flow more because you don't have that restrictor at the top at say 100 bar, let's say, like I've said this over and over again, and I tell people for best drivability on my 1430s and 1450s, because it has such a large opening, I tell them put 1375 in, and it works. And this works because you're not screwing up the low end here where the idle fuel is. It has the ability to just flow that much more at high pressure, because there's just a big ass opening and you're not trying to go through it. So yeah, it's the inverse, where at higher pressures, the one with the restrictor is always going to flow less, even at the same pintle, at the same, even if you have the same, end on the injector, and the same amount of size holes in the pintle, it's still going to flow more because you're just not fighting that initial opening. Now, a lot of people, and there are some new settings here, they just do one of two things. They either crank up this one number here, or, right, they do stuff like this, and to make the car idle, right, they'll go, oh, 13, and just put like a 13 in here. I mean, and yeah, the car will idle and it might even cold start okay, but that's not how you do it. You're going to fuel wash the cylinders. So this is a big problem. You don't want to fuel wash your cylinders because you're 2000 cc injectors. What has changed in tuning to now run big injectors so smoothly? So a lot of stuff has changed. And the available data is there that was not there before. But being able to turn certain things off to make other tables do what you're supposed to do. So it's mostly, the biggest issue was the startup, and the startup, overnight startup, was the bigger issue. You would have to fudge so many things to get just that one thing to be smooth, and you would literally make the car will surge afterwards, and it will literally, you'll actually fuel wash the oil. There's just mostly those two things are the big problems. But there's a whole lot of reasons that can happen for the surging. The MAF scaling could be wrong. The pressure could be wrong. There's a whole lot of things that could be wrong. The injector data itself could be wrong. The fuel offset could be wrong. The flex fuel sensor could be bad. But that's a tuner's job to kind of see, like, maybe these are your possibilities why your big injector is not idling correctly. And I've seen many tuners, and this is some of the most reputable tuners, and even the XDI 1400s, they can't get them to cold start. And man, that is one of the easiest injectors to get to cold start, like super easy. Same thing with my 1450s. They're super easy to get to cold start. You don't even have to fudge with any of the other settings that are available. But there is essentially the injector, we're able to change what is considered the open time of the injector now. And it's hard to explain what CVO is. I really don't want to get too crazy into what direct injection CVO means and what it does, but it plays a role in how the injector functions for emissions partially, and it also plays a role in fuel balancing cylinder to cylinder. That's what CVO does. That is an available option, but that does not correct the issue. Because the cars will, depending on the car, depending on the year, even different years of the FK8, the 2000s and 2500s, they'll start up, like 1 year will start up on 110 bar, the next year in 20 and 21 will start up on 200 bar, and you just can't do that because the injector is so big and 200 bar, and it goes back to actually two problems. One, at a very low RPM, you know, and that kind of pressure, you have such a small injector open time that the injector simply cannot open properly to create a proper spray in the cylinder to get it to go through what I've been calling the cat light off phase. It is part of the actual, like the emissions. So, but again, this is when you do all the correct things for the actual fuel, in the sense that you're not cylinder washing, you're not doing dumb things to the MAF scaling, right? When all the other settings are as they should be, that should be the only one thing you deal with, and it's only about 15 seconds on the first start. And that's only, and here's the thing too, like I've seen some people try to hide it other ways, but like, oh, well, mine are fine, and they start it up, and once you do that start, 60 seconds, like the next hour, it will not do it, right? There has to be, in order for that to go through that initial phase on the start, you actually have to let the car sit to the point where I believe it's ECT and IAT both have to match identically. This lets the car know that there's no heat whatsoever, and I believe there's a timer also. But we don't have access to that. Not even a Honda dealer would have access to that. That's something only like a Honda engineer would know as to the exact, but I can tell you that generally the car has to sit for usually about 4 to 6 hours after it's been run to go through that startup phase again. But there is some other settings though that have good consequences. However, they're not available in every year, and this is something that you need to be extremely careful with, playing with, because you can do some serious damage if you do this wrong. And I'll pick any factory setting. So here's where you can get yourself into real trouble. But I want to say there's a big but, and I really think this should be there, okay, is here, the injector amperage. Why should this be here? Because there is, and this is not even available in a lot of, like HP Tuners has a lot of stuff and has been around for a while. I'm not even sure that this is available in many of these cars, although it's in every car. Let me see. Nope. Wouldn't be anything but in here, or possibly, nope. So, it not be there, but it is in Motec. It is definitely in Motec. Let me see, M1.4 tune. And this is something that you generally don't need to play with. I downloaded this just so we can go over it. But even as we know, Motec, they do a lot of research. But if we look peak maximum current, 11.2, where Honda peak injector boost current, basically the max current itself is 11.5 amps. So the minimum peak, basically the lowest as they call it, versus into Honda, we have, well, that's a hold. They do not have hold current minimum. They have, now I don't know, I'm not sure. So they do not have a peak minimum current. So that's really kind of a more complicated thing. This will get you in trouble in Motec too, quickly. But like your hold current, so essentially your hold current is how much current you're going to stick into the injector to hold it open. Now, if you increase this too much, the injector doesn't open like you want it to. The injector will open, instead of having a nice camshaft lobe shape like, it will go bam, slam open, and then come down. So what this can do when you have an injector slam hard open like it, obviously you can damage it. The other thing is you're going to hit the rail with a harder, essentially, jump or like drastic drop in fuel pressure or possible changes. It can create erratic behaviors. No, wait, would you have to buy the math voltage? So I have a tune from you already. Would I need to buy your tune again to adjust my cold start and math harness? No, I've been taking care of people with those things for a lot less. It's not a huge change unless you want some change. Thoughts on running E30 on stock fuel system, stock turbo? Go for it, but just don't do it on a base map. I was just wondering if that behavior, is related to the 2000s. That has been that. Which behavior are we talking about? Because there's a lot of different behaviors. So the cold start is gonna be 2000s, but it's now can be just erased, like it doesn't exist. Essentially, it is now, you're now capable, or at least I'm now capable of making it where any FL5, DE5, any FK8 start just like, oh, I'm sorry. Notice that a startup, the car has a tendency to immediately rev up to 1500 2K for a few seconds before dropping down normal ideal RPMs. I'm going to say that somebody probably played with some settings. I don't know what car you have either. What car do you have? Are you an FK8? Are you a DE5? Are you an FL5? Like, what car are you? I'm sorry I didn't see that. FK8. No, that should not happen. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know who tuned it, but the startup should, your startup idle, which even on cams I don't change that much, should be no more than like 1200 RPM. And it shouldn't shoot up, and it should not surge. If the mass airflow scaling is wrong, that can do it. The pressure is wrong, that can do it. The injector size is wrong, that can do it. The combination of those things can do it. Maybe for some reason somebody requested a really high idle, trying to compensate for the cold start behavior, because of that's really just kind of not an answer to fixing the problem, because it causes surging and weird behavior. How to ghost cam? Oh, well, first of all, you can't ghost cam on Honda, but I'll tell you guys in a minute. At least I don't think you can't do it on Honda. I'll explain in a minute. But the other thing is you could have a vacuum leak that could possibly cause that, because you did just put 2000s in, so there's plausible that you've got some sort of vacuum line off and the engine's getting more air on startup. But you should see some really kind of screwy fuel trims with that stuff. And the other thing is with 2000cc injectors, you shouldn't really see any differential in fuel trims. The other thing that people do, and I don't think this is the answer either, to negate that cold start, is they'll go in, and this is absolutely the wrong way to do it. They will go into this ethanol, no, number injection, this one. This ECT startup table, and they will just put a crap load of fuel in down here. And then basically what you're doing is, as soon as you get past the starting phase, you fuel wash the whole motor. And then the other thing is, your engine's going to heat up faster than your long-term trims can compensate. And then when you get into wide open throttle, your long-term trims can't keep up. And what I mean by that is, because you have short-term, long-term. Short-term is like just that pull. And then the long-term, like it'll adjust, you know, -8, -10. That takes more time. And because that takes more time and it's not done right away, you can literally, by doing that too much on that startup phase, you can, yes, you can make it start cleaner on cold start, but you create that fuel wash, and then you create an issue where you have a very high positive trim at high temperatures, and you can end up not hitting your target fuel and damaging your engine. Now, how can you ghost cam? Well, okay, you cannot do that in Honda, but it's actually not that complicated. There's two things. This makes it more aggressive. Take your rocker. You can do this on Honda, but it doesn't really help. It just makes the car feel lazy as can be. Is you can turn around and turn VTEC on at idle. Set it to like 800 or 700 RPM and have your idle be there. So you can do that. That doesn't do all that much though, unless you have a really, really big camshaft. So it's actually pretty simple to do in Honda. So you turn on your VTEC at idle, and all you have to do is go into your VTEC right here, and right here in this low RPM area, what all you would need to do is change this to a 1, like so. Change this to a 100. And you now have VTEC at idle until it hits like 15% throttle input. So you now have VTEC at idle. And it will not fully sacrifice your drivability or spool because it will come out of VTEC here. Now, I don't recommend doing this because you don't have a lot of oil pressure at idle. Now, to ghost cam on inlet, the easiest way is to go in to your camshaft table and advance the ever-living crap out of it to, like, let's say 40. And all you're doing is making a lot of overlap. And if that doesn't cut it, and there's not enough on the inlet, you can go to the exhaust and go, okay, I'm gonna do the same thing, 40. And you've just put so much overlap in that you lose vacuum in the manifold, and it ghost cams. It gets you your barbling and popping and all that wonderful stuff. So that's the, what's the most amount I've seen on a stock Type R. Now, on a dyno jet, not a hub dyno, because they are not comparable. 600. I've made 653, and that's the stock bottom end. Oh, stock turbo R. Oh. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that right. Stock turbo R. So 440. I've made 440, 439 to be exact. But you need fuel system. I'm sorry to hear that, man. We can always solve the problem, man. High flow pressure line. Is there any bit of parts without upgrading the 2 fuel pumps? Greg's question is an interesting one I've heard a lot. I recently picked up some 1330cc injectors and a high flow pressure line. Is there any benefit to these parts without upgrading the 2 fuel pumps? Yes, there is minimal, because the 1330s are the OEM style, which is really just the same thing that Honda is selling. That's an OEM style injector. It's basically the same thing. Maybe not the exact, but close. And maybe they are Hondas. But that 1330cc, there is one advantage, and that is that you can gain a little bit of fuel from the line out of the pump. It's very minimal. It's a few percent. But we've spent a lot more money on other things for less power. And the thing that the other thing that advantage is to having the bigger injector. Running a lower pressure is easier on the components. So it's easier on the life of your regular stock high pressure pump. And again, it's not a big gain, but the other thing is, you know, having headroom anyway so that you won't run out of the injector. You can actually, let me correct myself a little bit. You can do a lot more RPM with a stock high pressure pump and injectors because you can keep the pressure down and use the RPM, because most high pressure pumps get a little bit better as RPM increases. That's most of them. We're looking at the grams per second of mass air on a meter pulled. Yeah, you could, Thomas. However, there's a catch to that. All they have to do to make that number look better, right, is go in here, go to the AFM, and go, oh, look, I got a PRL race. All right, cool. You know what? I'm going to make it look like I'm moving more air, because I know how people do this stuff. Let me add 10% here. Oh, man, it might run rich. All right, cool. Minus 7% there in the overall trim. And now we got a car that reads in the Honda app some ridiculous number of calculation, because it's saying it's putting that many grams of second in the fuel. So now your Honda app says your stock turbo 93 octane car makes 440 to the tire. Yeah. If you happen to have a true CFM meter, even that is not necessarily a indicator, because if you have a true CFM meter, the problem that you will run into is that every engine is a different efficiency level. Now, it will be closer for sure, and your ignition timing too, because you can move a crap ton of air and have not enough ignition timing, and you're just blowing it all out the exhaust. We run heavier ethanol content more or less with the 1330s. That's not going to happen. There's not enough to make it worth your while. I currently have the Honda fuel system upgrade. I want to upgrade. Can I just get XDI pump and XDI 2000s and call it a day? Yes, you could. I will say I do not prefer, for maximum volume, the Honda line be run with the XDI pump. Yeah, I've found, even with the Honda pump, what I consider significant gains. Like on the Honda pump, on their line, by doing my modification to the line, I have found 25, 30 horsepower worth of fuel. That's significant from just a line change. So that should tell you that on the XDI, that's more restriction. You definitely cannot run stock. Yes, agreed. Is there a recipe to high-revving Type R? I am. I revved to 8,800 RPM, sir. How high do you... And you know why I stopped? Because it still made power at 8,800. I stopped because I just didn't want to beat up the engine. That's why I stopped at 8,800. What's up, Davis? Long time, brother. That's why I stopped at 8,800. And if you want to rev that high, you now will need 2,500 cc injectors. And a lot of people will be like, oh, why can't you just do 1,000? The problem is the injection window gets so tiny. So this goes back to the biggest downside to direct injection besides complication, cost, and RPM. Because unlike port injection, where the fuel will spray when the valve closes and it'll just sit there and wait for the valve to reopen, you end up spraying while you're trying to ignite the fuel, and then you basically blow the spark out because the fuel isn't mixed and it just straight dumps fuel in there. I prefer contacted for tune inquiries and such. We can just do a text, to get the inquiry started. That's fine. I do have a scheduling system, but nobody seems to go to the scheduling system anymore. So I gave up on that. I tried making my life easier, but it is what it is. I just, hey. yeah, since I really don't use email, I like to do live. I like to make sure I'm there talking to my customer to make sure that they're getting all the correct information and everything that they need. Like, that's what I want. I want my customer to also understand the maintenance of what their vehicle is now. What do I need if I were to rev to 8K? All right, springs and retainers, and cams, and a bigger turbo and fuel system. So you would need a minimum of an XDI pump with 2,000 cc injectors with a high pressure line and at least a DW300C. That will get you right around 600, 620 to the tire. If you're running like a nice G30 770. The downside is if you're stock cylinder head, you could still do like 600, okay? You're going to have to do like 32 pounds, 33 pounds with cams still yet. But is nice. Awesome, Davis. I'm definitely going to get you hooked up. So but that'll get you, and you can rep to 8,000 on that. I have both Logan and Carlos making around 675-ish, but they are not stock bottom end. I really don't recommend going over like 620 on a dyno jet, on stock bottom end. Torque just gets too high. If you're stock head, you're not going to be spooling until around 5,000 RPM, especially with the camshafts. And that's because we put those little phase limiter pins in there, and we cannot put more overlap in to help it spool. So the only way around that is to port the cylinder head. Now, you would make similar peak power, but you would do it on a lot less boost. 600 on that is like in the mid 20 PSI range. Would I be able to baby the car to get it home from the shop beforehand? Yes, sir. This is something that I have told many people. If you do not change injectors or fuel system or mass airflow housing on these cars, you should be able to just put a turbo on and drive the car around normally. It should be just, and that's it. Unless there's something wrong with the install. Then you'll have a problem. But if they put it on correctly, you should have no problems. You should be able to just drive it home. Like I said, as long as does the Honda traction control still use the rear brakes at all, or is it a soft cut? That is a good question. It depends on. See, the traction control is not where the rear brakes come in per se. It is in the cornering. Now, the thing is, I'm not 100% sure if that really is true on this car. Don't quote me on it. That's a really good question. I don't know if it actually does that. If anybody else knows the answer for sure, that's a 100% fact. I know some other cars do it to force rotation, but I don't think the Type R does. I don't think the Type R uses rear brakes to force cornering rotation, because that's generally what it's there for, cornering rotation and stability. Like GM had their StabiliTrack, and it would, pump brakes on each corner depending on, ABS readings. So, yeah, you're burning through rear pads like crazy. It's probably because your front pads are not sufficient. You're definitely going to need more of a more aggressive front pad. Or a better matching. If you're okay with dealing with brake dust, cornering, that shouldn't be though. I don't think it does. I know other cars do. FK8 corner vectoring brakes. I don't really think it does. No, I'm pretty sure it doesn't. I'm pretty sure this is only in ABS. I really don't think so, man. Armo does not change anything but suspension feel. and steering tightness. That's all R mode's supposed to do. There's not supposed to be some brake vectoring because the car doesn't need it. You know, that might be what you might be experiencing is like the ABS kicking in or stability. So if you don't have an R plus full VSA disable, you might be in the situation where the car is trying to stabilize itself because it thinks that you are pushing the car beyond its safe limits, because usually the factory stuff doesn't let you throw the car around. You'll corner in hard and the back end won't come out. And this is definitely true, believe it or not. Even in Flash Pro Manager, there is another setting in here dealing with the cornering, and your traction control is 2 settings, and we have basically the cornering compensation value. So this is percentage of slip between essentially between each wheel beyond this number here, if I'm correct. Don't quote me exactly, but that should be how it functions. And the target slip essentially is just what you're aiming to will not engage until, you know, X%. And you might be running, like, are you tracking the car, or are you just driving it? I don't know where, I don't think it's that car. I know the other cars do it, but this car does not need it. It does not need the brakes. VSA helps keep the car stable. If it uses it rear brakes to induce oversteer. Actually, it should use rear brakes to induce understeer. It should not actually do the opposite, because you're dealing with stability with VSA on. If you are feeling like you're getting better turn-in, it's probably going to be something to do with how much better you're getting with the ability to, well, actually, no, see, the only place I could see maybe it would be used leaving it on that would create some sort of issue is when you start spinning coming out of a corner. I toss the customers over evil pads on the front since I just daily drive and have the EBC green stuff on the back. So I'm going to tell you a brake pad. It's aggressive, but you're going to love it. For like if you're doing like, you know, 5 laps, 10 laps. And I had them on my car, and I wish I didn't go back to a cheap one. A WinMax W3. There's a lot of brake dust, but do them front and rear, and I promise you, you're going to put them on, and your face is going to hit the dashboard. I had the stock brakes on my FK8, and I'd hit the brakes hard, and I'd feel the ABS kick in. And when the ABS kicked in, it felt like the car had a more ability to stop, because I was already on, you know, better rims and tires at that point. I was on PS4s. So, you know, the VSA on the vehicle, it's a stability assist. It is not a rotating assist. So basically the car, it's helping you keep it stable. It's helping you keep it from throwing it off the edge. Yeah, but where are you getting that? Because I don't see that in any sort of Honda. You're quoting it, but where? Yes, they do. But PS4s should have stopped better. But as soon as I put the WinMax W3s, I hit the brakes and I applied like 35% of the pressure, and the car stopped way harder. So if you can do that, I would say the W3s. And again, if you're wearing out rear brakes, it's because you don't have enough front brake bias. W3, I believe. The thing is, there's the rear pad. I believe this is where, because I believe they're the same as, I think they're the same as the STI or the Evo. It's the same exact brakes. And you would just use the rear pad. And I was always very happy. Like, they're not horrible in price, like $158 for rears. Where's the other? Look at this. Look, fronts, $145. I mean, so for $325, you'll have a set of brake pads that will slam your face into the dashboard. And when I had those, I didn't use the greatest rotors because I don't use the car for my track stuff like that. And for the most part, like it just ate the rotors. I just used some Rock Auto stuff for replacements rather than getting a two-piece rotor because I knew I was going to beat up on the rotors, and I figured just throw them away. I do stops from high speeds, not from, let me see. Yeah, and granted they were vented rotors, but they were just cheap stuff, and usually you get other brakes that they'll tell you it's like, oh, it's a step up, this, that, and there's usually not a huge difference. And but I want to say when I put those WinMax W3s, I'm not kidding. Compared to OEM, it was massive, 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 massive change. Oh, they don't really have them anymore. I guess they have some other different brand now. Maybe it was this R1 Concepts or something. Yeah, this is all I used. But those pads were so strong, by the time I wore out the pads, I chewed up the rotors. I mean, that's another thing. Okay, yeah, valid point. Put a rear sway bar in it and leave the front sway bar stock, that'll help. Help you get around corners. Just, a little less tire pressure in the front, a little more in the rear. And, you need to go around like 5 laps, and you have to check your starting tire pressure and then your finishing tire pressure. If your tire pressures are too high, it's going to rely on the VSA and start, beating up on your brakes and stuff. Radium hanger. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys right now, every fuel system in a tank has to have a venturi. This means that somewhere it sucks fuel into the basket from the outside and fills the basket higher than the level of the tank. The Radium kit does not have a way to do that. So every time I've seen an aftermarket company come out with something like that, and they try to say, well, the return will fill the basket. How does the return fill the basket when you burn the fuel out of the basket and there's no way to put more fuel in the basket than the level of the basket? Because you're just circulating the same fuel back in and out. So it's not going to magically fill up over the edge. Now, yes, there's a one-way valve on the bottom of it, but if you guys know and pull out your factory assembly, there's a one-way valve on that thing too behind the blue clip, which is the venturi. And what that does is it pushes fuel into the basket because that high pressure to the front, that 72 psi, it shoots fuel in past that valve and forces fuel to fill into that basket. That's the problem. I think everything else in the kit is nice. The other thing that they don't sit there and say, is there a check valve in the system? The check valve in the system so that when the car is sitting overnight, the fuel does not drain back. The other thing that's really kind of difficult, I mean, again, some of the stuff's really nice. I think it's crazy that they did 2 regulators on it. Really. And then you're forced to move everything around in the engine bay, and then you're forced, and the other thing is they put rubber lines on it. I don't know why you would do that, but there's rubber lines up front dealing with fuel, and rubber lines and ethanol don't mix. Also, anything more than a Walbro 525 is going to suck the life out of that basket anyway, because if I did 680 on a Walbro 450, what could you use triple pumps for in that little tiny space? I think it's overkill. I think that there's a lot of really good things about it. I think if you can solve the venturi problem, I think it would be a fantastic item. I do. But the problem is, this is not the first time I've seen it. Beachworks does it with the 8th Gen SI, or is it the 9th Gen SI? 8th or 9th Gen SI, their basket kit, same problem. You get down to a quarter tank, and it has no venturi, therefore it just, car dies, won't run. Bad thing, not great for that. That's the biggest thing. Other than that, though, for the most part, the other thing that kind of sucks is you have to drop the whole tank. The return kit that I've been working with and kind of toying with the idea of a DW440 brushless in it, you do not have to drop the tank to put anything in. Not even to put the line through. Now, heck, you don't even have to drop the tank if you wanted to make it a -8 line. You just run the line towards the back of the car. What does suck is you're going to have to be reaching up over the exhaust to get the line and route it around the tank. The return system put on was also bolt up to an OEM position and does not sacrifice anything else as far as like catch cans and things of that nature. Again, though, still deciding, is it worth the complicated process to release such a kit? Where also the thing is, there is a bolt on the firewall for where the filter up front and the regulator goes, and the regulator is a non-adjustable 5-bar, which you just put it in the car, again, set it and forget it thing, and you don't have to think about it. A lot less complication was the idea. I just haven't had some extra time to iron it all out with with the car that it's on. We had one other issue where we had a 525 in it and it burned up rather fast. Was not happy with how fast it burned up. Oh my God, my sinuses. I don't know what it is, but yeah. All right. So, but yeah, I think that it's a cool concept idea. The thing is, I don't think it's ever been through a testing phase. Not a full, Yeah, so why the 525s? Why do they burn up? If you just type in Hellcat pump, right? Failure, right? You got Hellcats at the dealer at 1,700 miles with burned up fuel pumps. Basically, a 525 is a Walbro 450 with a bigger impeller inside. That's it. So all you've done is kind of like P600 versus P700. The P600, and because we run at 72 PSI, that poor pump just takes a whooping at idle. It's like 80 PSI at idle, and that poor thing is just like full amperage all day long. Like, eesh. That's why the brushless pump we're looking into, it can be a dual stage brushless, and what can do is put it on a hop switch, which would be a real cool optional addition where at like 10 PSI, the kit turns on to the second stage of the pump so that the pump longevity is better, so that you can run a bigger fuel pump on a smaller regulator. Really cool idea. And the 440, the DW440 brushless at the 72 PSI whoops on a Walbro 450. However, a 450 is not bad. I made 680 on Carlos's car on a 450 with full race pump, 2,500cc injectors, my fuel assembly, a filter up front, and G30 and ported heading cams. So yeah. What's the ideal for builds on upgraded turbos, assuming flex fuel system is not restriction? Oh, the fuel system is not a restriction. I've seen some tuners stick with E40 or E50. The only reason to not increase to 55%-ish is if you are fuel system limited and you need a balance between the two. I see a lot of tuners chase a lot of boost, and that's not the answer. The car, every turbo and setup has a sweet spot. Stock fuel system is very limited, so E30, best spot with the right tuning, right? Unlimited fuel system, 55% would be the minimum with an unlimited fuel system, and that's because at that point, there's no more cylinder cooling effect to be had. So, Yeah, so at that point, no gain. Like you're wasting, you're just throwing fuel out the exhaust for no reason. Uh, I will say another thing I've seen, and I'll have to see if this holds true for stock fuel system too. Some of the new options in the injector settings may allow a little bit more fuel out of whatever injector you have in the car. So far in my testing, that has held to be true for the injector FKT injectors, has definitely held to be true for that. There is it definitely has added more fuel, big plus. So this just means that I'll be able to push them further. You know what? I would like to go over CVO. It is, because you can Google it and find out what the heck it means. So, this is something that's interesting. Ah. Okay. What is CVO? So, this is basically, they're saying that in the CVO, this is an option to keep the injector lift similar every time it lifts, or a certain height. Now, the thing is, if the vehicle or the injector you're using would generally, and I'm going to keep this in general, generally all HDEV 5.1s have a similar lift scale here, meaning all the injectors that are currently available, 5.1s and 5.2s, all have the same. I can cut them apart, and they all have the same design inside. They have the same resistance in the coil that goes on the outside. They have the same amount of thread counts to the coil inside the actual coil of the injector. So CVO can do also, but that can balance per cylinder fuel. So, and yes, the dyno's been ready at my place for a while now. I've had it ready. I just haven't run it because I've been doing other things. But it's ready to go. Yep. I should have took more pictures of that. But I thought it was going to take up so much space. Now, don't get me wrong. I'll tell you what. If somebody comes in and they want to use the dyno and they cancel last minute, I'm going to strangle them. You know why? Because the ramps, they're 200 pounds. The ramps to get the car up on the dyno are like 200 pounds and 15 feet long. They might even weigh more than 200 pounds. They are straight up angle iron. 15-foot angle iron. Oof. And to get them set up is a rather difficult task. But that CVO, like I showed you guys, it looks kind of like a camshaft lift, as I said earlier. And if you mess with the maximum, and maximum amperage to the injector, you can, like I said, that curve is no longer a curve. It just goes bam, like straight up. The one thing that can change a little bit from DI injector to DI injector is because the whole design in here and the little bit of this weight can vary ever so slightly, your latency in a DI injector is more based upon this piece of the injector, the actual little inside with the fuel flow through, than it is on the coil itself. Whereas like on a port injector, it's more the coil than it is the internal components that cause the delay, because you're dealing with a lot lower voltage, and since the pressures are higher here too, that can cause some differences in latency pressure based upon the holes and the size in this and stuff. Nice. Okay, everybody's coming. Well, hey, I'm going to my daughter's wedding next month, and guys, I am not missing that for anything. I don't care, man. I think my arm would have, something would have to literally shoot me to not go. So, what was the last thing? Was there anything else? So we did go over earlier. The startup problems that occur with 2000s and 2500s and general drivability. So, because some people made it in a little bit earlier, a little bit later, I'm just going to touch on them real quick again. Fuel washing, due to offsetting to try to make it cold start better. Surging, due to a lot of settings getting messed up. Anything from map scaling to wrong pressures and all sorts of stuff. General drivability, in general, can go, and it really should not. You should see a very, 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 very minor difference in drivability. The only time you might see somewhat of a significance in drivability is if you go ported head, cams, and 2000s, and it's like 60 degrees out and below with like half a tank of ethanol. You might start to see some stuff. Unless you go with like a much bigger cylinder head, like a 4-piston head, that thing is pissed off on 2000cc injectors until the car is completely warmed up. Those heads, that thing just pisses, they don't mix well. Usually with mine, I usually get 130 degrees in the engine, and off you go. That's more than enough. So that gives you like the excessive fuel on startup, fuel washing by offsetting. And so for those who don't know, maybe some people, not everybody knows, but fuel washing, meaning two things happen. This happens very common with DI, especially when you run them rich on cold. The fuel does not burn all the way. It gets behind the rings, so it gets trapped in the rings, and it washes down past there, and also can wash enough oil off the cylinder wall to the point where you kill the cylinder walls. And then, and then you get the rest of the things going downhill from there. You got the general engine wear, your protection of your bearings, all that stuff. And if you're doing shorter trips also, and it's running rich on top of it, you are never getting a lot of the fuel out of the oil. You can, on longer drives, get the majority of the fuel out of the oil. It comes out as vapors. You will often see, like, depending on, like, the oil, you can turn around and do a drive and just get the oil just hot enough, and you've been doing a lot of short drives, get it hot, take the oil cap off, and you literally see vapors come out of the oil cap. That can often be a sign of fuel vapor. And obviously, if you're coming off the track and your oil's 290 to 350 degrees, you're going to see vapors. That's obvious. But I'm talking about regular driving. It can happen. It's not uncommon to see that. Even with 2000s and getting to run stock like, you're still going to have a little bit more wash than you would with a smaller injector. But it shouldn't be an issue to the point where it creates a problem with the oil or the cylinder walls. You shouldn't have those sorts of problems. So, yeah, that pretty much covers the DI injectors and how they function. And I always found this neat, and I didn't know this until a few years ago, until I started researching injectors, that they take a high-strength laser, and that's how they make the holes in the end of these tips. So, and then this tip is then welded on, and and you can tell by the coloration, them being welded. And I think it's really neat how they do this. But I can tell you for sure, there is no off-the-shelf injector that is anywhere near a 2000cc injector that an OEM has made for a production vehicle. There is nothing that size. So that's why they have a more difficult time with tuning and tunability. That is why. Because you are changing the characteristics, because the actual tip and the inside and the holes in the piston and everything else is a balancing act by the injector manufacturer. Really wild, really neat. And they are driven off. The other thing, I think I talked about latency earlier, and that has more to do with the inside design. With the latency, dang, I got sidetracked. Oh yeah, well no, that's because they balance. Yep. No, never mind. Lost my train of thought. My brain checked out there. You just getting to that time. My eyeballs are getting heavy, and I'm getting tired. Any of those injector settings, you guys can just pretty much look up. Now, I will say, there is one setting in here, but it doesn't work the same way. Let me just, any old one. Does it have it on? Because not all of them have this option. Linearity. This, well, this might not even be necessarily perfect representation. Let me see. So, that's pressure and MPa. Yeah, no, that is right. I don't think, nope. So, the one thing I'm not sure is what they consider, what this actual top, because man, is that volume? Wait, no. So which one? So are they going off volume or pressure? Because this looks like injector open time. That's what this looks like. And the reason I'm saying that, it's saying linearity. But if you look, the numbers are close to matching. And it's almost like this is a calculated. See, and this says inverse. And this is just the literal opposite of this. So maybe this is some sort of calculated, estimated limit of variance between, you know, what it expects the output to be. Be nice, though, this injector versus pressure correction, we can see here, here we go. So this chart, this would help in putting in the, as I told you, or actually this is new, but not all of them have it. This would kind of help with the injector, not having an injector slope table. Now, the thing is, if you look here, it says at 25 MPa, which is megapascals, or what does that equate to? My God, that is one huge number. It's a lot of pressure. If you notice, it said minus 37. 25 MPa to PSI. 3,600 PSI. So, at 3,600 PSI, provided the injector, right, provided the injector could flow, it would, at that pressure, start to go negative to the point where, meaning instead of having a nice linear increase, or even from the standardized injector slope, it could literally deviate and be like 37% less what you would expect. So I guess the best way to put this, let's say you have a regular port injection system, you have 40 psi of pressure, and at 40 psi of pressure, they are 600 cc. That's a pretty common pressure in that, right? But at 80 psi, they are not going to be 1200 cc. At 80 psi, it might be like this, where when you're doubling the pressure, you could take as much as 35% less. So you could take that number and do your math, and that's what that setting is for. And so it would basically be, so what I say, 600, so 1200 times point would be, so I said 37%, so 63. Oh, wait, go back. 0.63. 756 cc at double the pressure. So if that makes any sense to you as to what that happens, is there's limits to where you cannot keep driving injector pressure in, because this negative number is the injector's internal ability to function against pressure. So, and I think that's pretty crazy though if you think about it, because here it's saying it's almost even at 9.7 megapascals, which is 10 megapascals is 1450 psi. It's a zero. So this scale, and this only would hold true, this injector pressure correction is going to be almost like a Motec equivalent to fuel linearization, where this versus flow versus pressure and the volume, but this has a volume request also. So that, no, that's a delay. I'm sorry. That's the linearization's a delay. My apologies. That's a delay. And now that I'm thinking about it, this would be too much stuff. Yeah, this would be injector. That doesn't make any sense. No, this might not be a linearity chart. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I'm trying to figure out what, makes the most sense. So, this opening pressure table could be ECU compensation for opening against, X amount of pressure. Extra voltage, less voltage, or less amperage. Injector RPM correction. This is interesting. That's real interesting. However, in a way, do we need that? Yes, we could. So, but that's 0.1%. I want to tell you that is basically when the injector goes to fire and you're at 6,500 RPM, how much ahead of the curve or behind the curve are you in the crank sensor reading versus the actual injector open? The thing is, that's such a tiny percentage, you don't really have to go crazy with that. You do more of your tuning here. And whatever makes more power in this area here, in the injector phase, because you have RPM and you have the amount of fuel volume and demand, that'll help you a lot more than messing with that table. And this one is a self-correcting table that magically, once you change it, the fuel trims go all wildly different and then magically go back to where they were. It's a magic table because there's another table in the background doing something else. Port injection is 4 times the pressure equals double the output. It might be right. But I don't know anybody that's running. Well, I do have a pump that could do 160 psi. Oh man, starting to get to the point, man. I'm getting burnt out here. My nose is like, stuff always burns though. Ugh. God. what time is it? Oh, that's why. It's getting like 9:15. Getting there. So, I don't know, Andy, you want me to just share that you're creating something? Something we had discussed earlier? Or do you want to just save that to a later date? Because you already did make an announcement on your YouTube, I believe. I think he's doing something really great for the Accord guys. He is releasing a fuel system upgrade for the Accord guys. One of those things being injectors and some other components, needed to make the fuel system a better fuel system. Poor Accord guys have been stuck on stock fuel system without any port of like 400-ish horsepower. And that's all they've had for a long time. And now, thanks to Andy's hard work and testing and willing to fork the money over for things, he's found some good solutions he's happy with, and going to be releasing the product for the sake of community, because this is not something that somebody who is a general working man, he does not need to do that for the community. So please, if you guys know him, at least he deserves definitely deserves to be commended for that, because I've been there, I've been in those shoes, and I know that that is not something you take lightly when you're ready to do that for people. Fortunately, I've been a small part of it. I have no large part in this whatsoever. I have a very small part, and I don't even need to just want to say that, I just look forward to being able to help him achieve that goal of being able to release the fuel system. It's not some massive otherworldly gains, but it's way better than what the Accord guys got now. He's definitely been into the upper 400s with what he had on his car on just DI now. That is a huge leap forward for Honda Accord. Massive. And he went through some things that, man, I don't even know if I'd be willing to do, but he did it. And I also see a good possible future also, in the sense that now that he's done the research, maybe get into, I can't get into all the information. All I'm going to say is I think there's maybe now, let me put it this way, maybe now people will turn their heads to the Accord and finally go, oh, you know what? Maybe we should make the software a little better. Give these Accord guys, like, hey, maybe there should be high pressure pump controls and stuff like that, because, man, it just, yeah. And maybe now that there will be an upgrade there, they will start taking the Accord seriously. And they will start doing some serious fuel system modifications for it, and just go from there. And I really hope, though, too, one other thing that we need, and this is not something that I don't know if it will happen, but I will show you guys something else that we need, even us FK8 guys, when it comes down to the software. This is direct. It's under direct bank 1. Right here. This right here. Fuel pressure direct bank 1 pump offset advance. So that's your timing for your high pressure pump. And the thing is, I didn't realize that it's like I'm like looped inside a loop inside a loop. Why don't I doing that this way? Let's see too. There we go. Hey. I had it like that for the longest time. I didn't realize it. So that in itself, just letting you guys know, that in itself, that is opening and closing of the solenoid timing. And if we could have that one setting, and I'll tell you what it does with that one setting. When you have a really massively flowing high pressure pump like a full race. And the solenoid, and it flows so much fuel and so big, if the timing is wrong, or even XDI, okay, or even Honda with the camshaft plus, every one of those situations, being able to adjust that one setting where we can time the solenoid better with in relevance to the lobe, to where the lobe is positioned to open. If we could be able to time that solenoid better, every pump would flow more. And this is why Motec can win in so many ways. Because you can take that same pump, that same fuel system, and you can put more amperage into the injector. You can literally do changes on site rapidly. And the other thing is the high pressure pump, the ability to put more into the pump, because we can do whatever we want with that pump control. It's so simple. And the displacement of the pump is just an offset. These are your basic PI settings. Those hold sway too, but even these two basic settings, you know, like an XDI pump, this is 5 and this is 30, and it works perfect with the increase of the volume difference of 40%. And but there is not there. Where is it? This, your peak pulse. Okay, so this is the maximum allowed pulse. Wait, where did I go? And there it is. Maximum allowed opening of that solenoid. So, because we take the XDI and put it on the OEM, how fast it opens versus the fuel that goes in versus the fuel that comes out is not timed perfectly. If we had that one setting, and actually two, peak pulse, okay, and we had peak pulse and the actual opening time, you would get more out of an XDI. You would get more out of even more out of a full race pump. You would get more out of a stock. You get more out of, I don't know about a stock pump because they're optimized really good, but like you get more out of the Honda pump upgrade. You get more out of the Honda pump upgrade with the cam. So, and I'm actually curious, has anybody been crazy enough yet to put the XDI pump on a Honda cam? Like, has anybody been crazy enough to do that? I don't know. Maybe. But I can tell you on the full race pump, you don't need it. So another thing that, you know, as I said, you know, you'll hit an RPM climb, and then the pressure will drop in a certain area. That has a lot to do with the timing of the pump. So if anybody knows anybody that's been crazy enough to put an XDI pump on a Honda cam, let me know. So, but I think that just about sums it up. Video's kind of just languing on at this point, and I'm tired. I had a lot of thinking and stuff to do today, and I was porting ahead mad late yesterday, so. Oh! I want your guys' honest thing on this. I was thinking about doing this, doing like a raffle, and I have a cylinder head. You might as well call it brand new. It's got like 5,000 miles on it, but it's been cleaned up. And doing a cylinder head raffle. And literally for a ported cylinder head. No, it's not going to have valve train or anything like that, but the cylinder head will be ported, decked, and essentially the valve seats will be cut, just a quick, safe cut to make sure that they're ready to be installed. And you would be a ported head for a raffle. And there's kind of two ways to go about it, because obviously I can't have a $0 because I have the money invested in getting the head, and the new cylinder head right now is $2,700 from the dealer, or $2,600 with the core charge. So just say that take away the core, that cylinder head is basically worth almost $2,000 before porting. So not some, but I would have to get a fair amount of money. I would think that maybe I would have to do a drawing, and it'd be $10 per person. And although it would need a lot of people, I'm not trying to make $4,000. I'm trying to literally give something back to somebody and make it a lot more positive message than a lot of the things that we've been seeing out there. So if I raffled that, something like that, to cover time and cost, I would have to get on $10, like 200 people. That's what I would have to do. So I would have to, if not, I'd have to do it for more money, and a lot less people I think would buy in. So I don't know where the sweet spot is, but the idea of 200 people at $10, yeah, that sounds really good. Because porting alone is $1,300, and milling is, depending on your machine shop, generally about $200. So I'd be essentially, that's, $1,500 that I'm perfectly okay if we got, like, 190 people in the raffle would be fantastic. Because, like I said, it's just about trying to give something back. And the idea of raffling off a ported cylinder head, maybe at $10 a raffle ticket, Now, the only other thing is there will be a stipulation. Once you buy a raffle ticket, you can't ask for a refund because you didn't win the cylinder head. Because I know some people are going to try it. So there's going to be a stipulation in there that says you have to sign. This is not refundable, as this is a raffle for a cylinder head. And if you don't win, you cannot ask for your money back. So, because I hate to say this, but somebody's going to be, yeah, anyway, I'm not something to do. $20, 150 people. I mean, I don't need 150 people at that point. I'd be happy for 100 people to buy in at that point. I know that I've invested more money and time into it, but at the end of the day, like I said, it's just about giving back. And I need to toss the idea out there with a lot of people about giving back, Should do it parts. Spend gets you $1 ticket. Oh, get you one ticket. Yeah, but I don't know. I would see some, but I'd have to run it for so long because there's so many products on the website that I really don't make a lot of money on. Like, you can buy a 600 wheel horsepower fuel system. You can buy quite a few of them, and I'm nowhere near the price of that cylinder head or what I make on some of that stuff. That's why I say a straight $10 raffle. I think a lot of people, I mean, if you own an FK8 and you spent like $40,000 or an FL5 and spent $60,000 and you're not okay with the possibility of winning $3,000 worth of product for $10, I mean, yeesh, I mean, I probably could add that as a bonus, but then it wouldn't be fair for the people spending $10 and getting one ticket. And I would also have to do something like, okay, people pick the numbers for the giveaway, right? And then put all the numbers in a row, like, of the people, put all the people, print out every single person, and between X amount of orders, I'd have to put, okay, pick a number between 1 and 200, and the first time that any number is duplicated, that person would win, Yeah, I know, man. I feel your pain. Been there through that with the money spent on the build, I'm okay though. Like, I'm okay with $10, 200 people, like I said, especially at the price of a cylinder head now. So, and and the best part is they get the cam caps with it too. I normally don't like giving up the cam caps, but whoever it goes to, this is going as essentially a new product because the cam caps have no wear. There's nothing on them. Nothing. They literally are brand new. So, you know, send away the pictures. The pictures of some port work will be done. And, oh yeah, speaking of port work and saying this, I've seen recently, and I'm not going to say who, but I'm going to say I've seen a recent CNC port work, and CNC is not always good. So sometimes a person's hands are just, they can do what a CNC could never do. A person's hands can create a perfectly radius of infinite points, where a CNC goes 4 degrees, 4 degrees, 4 degrees, 4 degrees, 4 degrees. The person programming the CNC matters too. So, how long have I been tuning for approximately? Leash. Wow. See, I was married for 9.5 years. I started taking it more seriously. Like, was it right when we married? And I've been divorced for over 2 years. Technically, I was married for 10.5 years. So they make you wait a 4 years. I don't know, about 12 years ago. But I was working on cars for, like in diagnostic, and I was a lead diagnostic tech for, I want to say, even a matter of like within a few years of when I started. By the time I started at 19 working on cars, by the time I was 21 and I was in 21 or 22, I was in Virginia, and I was at a shop in Denby, Virginia. Company Tune Up Plus, called, and I was the lead technician there in a matter of just 2 years. So I was always up there in the diagnostic and understanding the car in general, and the tuning just kind of came natural with as things progressed with cars, and the ability for a person like me to get into the software more easily without actually flashing an ECU directly. I'd say, yeah, probably about 12 years ago. That's kind of when things really got a little bit easier to get into. I will say, as far as like building cars, though, there's a video that is really old, and the owner of the car, let me see if I can find it. Here it is. Look at that. So this is an old video, very old. This is like 2002 kind of old. The red car, I had a very large part of building. I was essentially the primary technician on that car, and this is before some people that own a Type R was even born. I've been doing this a lot longer than I usually kind of like. People think I'm just some FK8 tuner. I had quite a few cars. So I would agree with you, Greg, that tuning and heavy diagnostics seem to go hand in hand. However, every tuner I've run across, because except for an elite few, okay, very, very, very few, and they're usually on a hardcore race team, have any real diagnostic capability. I'm going to tell you, in the FK8 scene, all of the people I've seen do not have what I consider an A technician level of diagnostics. All of them. Seeing things, words said like, I can diagnose a bad injector from a data log, when the only way to diagnose a bad injector from a car you cannot touch is, like, you can't do it. You can't. The only way you would know is if it's literally puking raw fuel out the exhaust. So that is like, okay, you know what? I probably got a bad injector. But if the car's running rich, there's a crazy amount of things that can do that. Or if it's breaking up at high RPM, or there's a whole lot of things. And I get into this because there's just so many people that just do not have like this car especially. Like, I've so many people said, oh, well, this people been doing Hondas for 20 years. Great, so have I. I just don't talk about it. They really don't have a clue about this car because it is a Bosch fuel system, which is German. It is a Bosch ECU, which is German. It is direct injection, period. Which is why when we first got the cars, they were saying, oh, 400 horsepower and they blow up. Come on. No. 400 horsepower? Man, Chris makes 650. Chris makes 650, stock block. Tim, 620, stock block. O'Neill, 620, stock block. Like, O'Neill's 95,000 miles. Chris, I don't even know how many miles here. O'Neill's 20,000 miles on 600 plus wheel horsepower. And then I've got, let me see, 1, 2, 3, like 5 RV6s making 585 to the 575 to 585 to the tire. Stock motor, the stock block, like stock pistons and rods. How far we've come in understanding. So, but when this car first came out, I was already ahead of the game on that because I had a already tuned Volkswagen. Do the Raffle. I'll buy a few slots. So that was one thing I was thinking about. Would it be fair to allow somebody to buy more than one? And if so, what should I limit that to? I did not think about that with the Raffle. So say we raffle off a cylinder head and do that, right? A ported head. You know, how do we make that fair? Because granted, the person who puts more in, they may not win, but you know, and then you know, I thought about something too. I think maybe, because it would be nice, though, like, you wrote in there about $25 get you one ticket. That's not fair for the person who puts a raw $10 up, because $25 in one ticket is, I don't know, make $2. That's not fair either on this end. So, I was thinking, maybe if somebody buys, say, a fuel system or 2,000cc injectors, give them X amount of, you know, X amount of tickets for that. Like, give people more than one way to get some skin in the game, right? Instead of just putting out $10, right? Put specific products that apply to, you know, X amount of raffle tickets, right? But unfortunately, you know, I would have to put them on a higher price item, you know, because remember, at the end of the day, say hypothetically, I mean, yeah, I'll get more business, so yeah, never mind, that where it breaks out even. Yeah, you're right. The Raffle, it's about odds, you know. So I think what I'm going to have to do is do a poll on Facebook, and, you know, hopefully, you know, I'll get the right response. If I get like, 1,000 people answer it, right? I think what would be ultimately fair, right, if 1,000 people say yes, would be as soon as I hit a maximum of 300, just cut the Raffle off, right? Because I don't think it's fair. I don't want to, you know, say hypothetically that does work, right? Is it fair to make like $10,000 off of it? I don't think that's right either, because I don't want to do that either. That's not what I'm trying to accomplish here. So, I think that would maybe include an item of the raffle or a cheap advertisement like shirts or lanyards or something. Yeah, shirts cost me like $15 to make. That's not gonna work. Yeah, but if you do first, second, and third, what the hell does second and third get? Would a second get a free tune, and what's third place get? $100? Then I'd absolutely have to get more raffles, right? Like, that's not a bad idea. All right, do it this way. Do a special edition shirt. You know, you guys sit there and friends joke like, hey, he's the headmaster. And then put on the front of their shirt the headmaster t-shirt and then put on the back a cylinder head. Oh, man. Literally put it on there. The headmaster, and then just put fkatd.com on the back. Oh my God. All right, I'm losing it because you guys break my chops so damn much. All right, I'll have to think about it. I think it's a good idea. It's going to be really hard to keep track of, you know, and then just, you know, so just put your face in a shirt, one of the quotes on the back. Oh man, oh my God. That's hilarious. That's hilariously great though. But yeah, I was going to, okay? And then I'll say this, and then I really got to cut it down because even Loki's tired back there. He's like, Dad, I want to go to sleep. All right. I tried to get for a website because I was going to move the cylinder head porting over to a site by itself because I've done older K series, I've done LS, I've done a lot of different cars, right? I've done older B series. I was trying, I should have known this was going to be taken for all the wrong reasons. I tried to see if what was available was headmaster.com was available so I could put a cylinder head porting advertisement site on there. Oh, man. Obviously, it was taken by the wrong type of, I should have known better. But, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I am definitely going to call it a night. I am exhausted. My eyeballs are burning. My nose is really stuffed up. I need to go take some allergy medication. I thank you all for joining me. And for your questions, too. They're important. You know, your questions are important. So, and so are you guys, you know. The community is important. Questions are important. Positivity is important. So, thank you so much for joining. Everybody, have a great wonderful Monday evening, whatever's left of your Monday evening, and may you have a blessed week.